Welcome to this podcast, Holistic Creators, where we share our unique and universal stories about shaping the future for the 4 Ps: people, planet, purpose, and profit. My name is Swanette. I'm a mental coach and your host of this show. My intention for this show is to inspire you on your path to a holistic future. So welcome. Welcome to my podcast, Holistic Creators. My name is Swanette and I'm your host. Today my guest is Drummond. She is the author of Reflection of the Dating Pool, a journey that started with challenging herself to go on 50 dates in 52 weeks and led to building resilience, finding a tribe, and ultimately falling in love again with herself. Cindy is the curator of WomenOnlyWeekend. For 9 years, she has been hosting a retreat for women in the heart of the Rocky Mountains. With the reality of a global pandemic sinking in, Cindy pivoted and decided to launch her first virtual retreat, WOW, the virtual experience in a fully day of learning and laughing from the comfort of your living room. So welcome, Cindy, to my podcast. I'm happy to have you here, and I'm curious to hear about this journey of dating.
Thank you, Swanette.
So, can you give us a little bit of information how your story started? Because I'm sure this didn't start with having 50 dates. So what was your life, I don't know, 10 years before now, and what was the big transformation you made to become who you are now?
Thank you. If we go way back, so I was married with and had 2 daughters. And then I left that relationship and I ended up in a relationship that at the time, I didn't realize how toxic it was. And until the person I was with, the police actually burst into our house one morning and arrested him. And so that was shocking in itself. And I knew I needed to take my daughters and flee from that situation. And so there I was in my mid-40s and feeling angry at myself for making a mistake and trusting the wrong person. And I knew that everyone around me was worried about me and I was worried about me. So I made a decision at that point that I was going to focus on something positive. And that's how we led to my first Women Only Weekend event. And we can talk about that later. But that event, surrounding myself with like-minded women and just seeing how when people come together in a tribe situation and connect and love and learn, gave me the confidence to think that I could begin to trust again, trust myself, trust other people. And so I guess I set a lofty challenge because I thought I didn't want to go back into another relationship quickly. I knew that wouldn't be the answer, but I also knew that ultimately I didn't want to spend the rest of my life alone. So I said, okay, I'm going to give myself a year and I'm going to take this year and I'm going to go on a number of dates. And so the obvious answer to me was, okay, there's 52 weeks in a year. I'm going to date 50 men in a year.
So you said you had a situation where you have been married and one morning the police knocked at your door and ran into the house. So how was it? So how did this happen? And can you give a little bit more details about this kind of situation to understand what was it really where you are coming from?
Sure. So I think that if other people can relate, you're in a relationship, and this is not the father of my children, this is the relationship after that, but we're living together and there's questions like something's not quite right, the communication is broken down, but you're in the situation, so you just know something's wrong, you don't know what's wrong. And so then I wake up one morning and literally the doorbell rings. 9 police officers come rushing into the house. They grab him, put him in handcuffs. They start searching our house and take him away in front of me and the girls. And you're confused and you're bewildered and you're also like thinking that there must be a mistake and how can this be possible? How does this happen to me? Like this is not the life that I set up for myself and my daughters. And what it turned out is the reason that there was a breakdown in communication, and there was a reason that what was wrong is that, there was substance abuse issues, which then ultimately led to a charge that he had been actually charged with voyeurism. So he was recording coworkers online without their permission, and just not great things, obviously. So that was an immediate sever of the relation. I needed to get us out of the house and get us safe, but also struggling with how am I in love with somebody who did such a terrible thing, and trying to come to grasp with the reality is that that person I now have to stop loving because they're obviously not who I thought they were. But that's hard. Like your heart is kind of in you wake up, you go to bed and you're in love with somebody, and you wake up the next day and you have to hate them. And that was a really tough thing to figure out how to do.
And how was your solution? How did you do that? So changing the emotions towards him? Because obviously some parts of your life has been kind of a lie, because you couldn't figure out what was going on because there was something behind the scene. Even though you had this feeling, okay, something is not okay, but not knowing what. So how did you change this feeling towards this man?
I would be lying if I said that you just do it because it's the right thing to do. I mean, obviously the physical separation of moving out of the house and coming and then trying to figure out, okay, so how do I move past a feeling of caring for somebody? And it's not that I didn't want to care for a person, but I just knew that I couldn't be in love with that person. So first it was the actual physical distance, and then it was boundaries and just, no access to my children ever. We owned a house together. So it's also complicated because you've got assets and you've built this life together for 7 years, and you got to figure out how to take that life apart and move on. So I think also, I didn't know it at the time, but I think part of that, setting myself up for that year journey, I also knew I was giving myself time to sell the house that we had bought together. And so I would have to see him, but I would just make sure that the periods of having to see him would get longer and longer, the stretches, and only talking to him when I needed to talk to him, and, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that was also, again, planning on my part, but I didn't necessarily know that I was doing that. But the ultimate goal was to no longer love him and to set myself free. And so that was sort of that process.
What else did you experience during this 1 year of separation and having more focus on yourself at that moment?
Well, the bad things that you experience is that there's judgment from other people because they don't understand the situation. So they are like, you shouldn't be talking to him. And it's like, well, but we still have this life that we have to, there's debt together. There's all of those things that you have to come in, you have to figure out. But then the part of the healing process for me was taking a good look at who I was and what parts of me that were strengths and what parts of me that were weaknesses, and how I was going to put my best self forward. And so how I was showing up maybe in the beginning of the journey when I was meeting people, my heart was closed, and I obviously had walls up, and I didn't let people really see who I was. But as you start going through that journey and you start forgiving yourself and you start trusting other people a little bit, you start showing up differently. And so I'm sure that who I was showing up with on date number 2, 3, and 4 was very different than who I was showing up with on date 30 and 40.
How did you do this healing work on yourself? So it is like, okay, you said there was a kind of wall around your heart, and then you somehow learned to connect again to other people by dating also these kind of men. And how did you do that? So what kind of methods or techniques can you give a little bit more about that?
Well, the reason that there is a book, Reflections from the Dating Pool, is because that very first night I started journaling. And something that I hadn't done for a number of years, but again, you're trying to process these events. And so I was writing them down. And so the journaling, because it was also a journaling of all the dates I was going on, that was very cathartic. And I think that helped with the healing process for sure. And again, when I started reconnecting with other women that I knew, women that came into my life from my event and old friends, again, that's very cathartic, because I think that one of the things that I learned through this is we all have a story, and bad things can happen to good people. And so being able to share and have empathy for other people was also something that I think was really healing. And then towards the end of my journey, I really got involved in gratitude and trying to, the gratitude challenge. The last part of my journey, I spent an entire month, every single day, I wrote a gratitude letter to somebody in my life. And I told them why I was grateful to them and what they had done and how they had shown up for me. And I think that also just opened up my heart as well.
Yeah, I know about this gratitude exercise, and I really like that. Even if it is not really sending the information with the heart to the people, it is really that it helps yourself. And also, being in this focus of being in gratitude. So you can do this even if you don't have a problem at the moment and don't want to heal. It is very powerful to write down every evening before you go to bed what was so special during the day and you are grateful for. So this is a very powerful exercise, definitely. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So coming back a little bit, before you started dating, how did you take this decision, or what was the impulse that started all this journey?
I think it was one of the things that I realized when I became suddenly single is that, a lot of my relationships with friends, they were married and so you're that person that no longer has a significant other. And so I didn't want that. I mean, I knew that ultimately I still had a vision for my life, and I wanted to have somebody that I would be able to share my life with. I know a person said something to me one time I felt quite fascinating. She said, when you're in a relationship, that other person is actually helping you not categorize your life, but they bear witness to it. If you come home from work and you've had a good day or a bad day, you want to share that with somebody. You want somebody to be documenting the life that you're building for yourself. And there's nothing wrong with not being in a relationship and being single, but it is nice to come home and tell somebody about your life. It's nice to talk to somebody about what the future looks like. And so ultimately I knew that was what I wanted. I was okay on my own after a while, but I wanted somebody to spend my life with.
Okay. And then having this clear vision that you want to have somebody in your life, how you came up with this idea, okay, now I will have 1 year and meeting 50 guys to figure out if one of them is the one who can be with me in the future. So this is still a step forward.
And I mean, the lofty goal of 50, I mean, after, date number 6 or date number 7, and you're sort of thinking, oh, this is a lot of work. And, you don't always you go into something thinking, oh, it's going to be like The Bachelor or something. There's going to be all these amazing men lining up to meet me, and they're going to be but that's not the case, right? Like, there's a lot of things, if you've been online dating, or, you say, do you have any single friends you want to introduce me to? And, it is a tenacious journey, and it requires a lot of, tenacity and resilience and a sense of humor, because again, we're all just humans living our own lives, coming into situations, and it's all I can say is that it requires perseverance, and you have to hold on to an end goal, which is like anything in life. If you want a different job, or you want something, you have to keep the end goal in mind and ride the bumps along the way.
Can you give us some examples of what you experienced? So meeting 50 guys, I think there is a wide range of how this get-togethers could look like, or how they looked like.
Yeah, so definitely there's maybe not for everybody. For me, it was the first time a person stood me up. And so, you're getting ready and you're excited and you're a little nervous, and you go to the coffee shop or wherever and you're waiting and people are coming in and you're smiling thinking that they might be the person or not the person. And then, 10 minutes goes by and nobody's shown up, and 15 minutes goes by and you're kind of feeling embarrassed and you're wondering if people are noticing that you're waiting for somebody that's not shown up. And then you wonder, did they show up and leave because they didn't like what they saw? So there's all those insecurities that come with that. And that's really hurtful, but that's something that you have to address, because life's kind of like that. I mean, you do show up, and not everybody's going to appreciate when you do show up, right? You're not going to be the right person, the right fit for the job. So that definitely was one of the things that I had to learn along the way, is it's not about me. Even if it is about me, it's not about me. It's about them. And I'll never know. Did they show up? Did they not show up? I'll never really know.
Okay, this was a not so nice example. But have there been some more that were very outstanding or so different than you normally would expect, or you had to laugh a lot with, or so? Can you give me some more examples? Because otherwise I will not start this journey meeting 50 guys.
Absolutely. There was definitely, but again, everyone's coming in at their own place. Like I remember there was one guy that was lovely. He showed up with flowers and he was chatting with me, and then he's following up that night with texts, and he's asking me questions, and then the questions are asking me about what should we do this summer and where should we go, and I was just like, oh, like this is really quick, right? So again, he may have been in a different place in his journey. At the time, I was terrified, thinking, what kind of vibes am I giving off that after one meeting, you're planning our life together? And again, this is not a bad story about him, but it's an example of, especially in something like dating, when two people are putting themselves out there, they may not be on the same page. They may not be in the same place, right? Again, further into my journey, when my heart was more open, I might have even been receptive to that. But certainly when I was just starting my journey, that was terrifying to think that somebody was so quickly willing to plan our life together, which is ultimately what you want. I just didn't want it at that moment.
Okay, so I can understand that. Just meeting someone and then asking for what are we doing next summer is a huge jump into the future, yeah. And have there been any other experiences, like you had a really wonderful evening and perhaps you met someone again and again? So this was like a little bit more of a process, and even though it is not the man you are now with.
Absolutely. There was a few people that I went on second and third and fourth dates, and nice relationships. And again, it was that slow entrance back into what would a relationship look. And I just remember, the first time that I went over and watched a video at somebody's house, which, I hadn't done for a year. And it was nice when somebody grabbed your hand, and it just kind of brought back those feelings of, okay, maybe I can fall in love again. But I think ultimately, and that was what you introduced me as, if you're looking for someone to fall in love with you, you first have to fall in love with yourself. And that was the entire journey. I didn't necessarily know it at the time, but I was beginning to love myself again. And then ultimately, I think when I was ready and feeling that I was okay on my own, because I did love myself, then that's when I was ready to meet someone.
Okay. So can you give us a little bit more insights how this process was for yourself, like loving yourself again? So what did change inside of you? What kind of feelings disappeared, came up? So that people can perhaps resonate when they hear you about your journey, how this can feel if they go into this process for themselves.
Yes. So, I mean, ultimately, I would love to say to everybody, nobody needs affirmations from another person. But I think that that would just be not true. So it is very important that you love yourself. But I think one of the ways you get that is from validation from others, right? You know, it doesn't have to be men necessarily. I was getting validation from my family, and I was getting validation from my friends, like my girlfriends that I had. And so that also helps build love for yourself and acceptance for yourself. And I think ultimately too is when you're going through any sort of transition, you draw lines in the sand of what you're going to accept going forward and boundaries. And I think that also helps build the resiliency and the love for yourself.
So what I feel being in my own process, it is really like that I can be with someone, this is wonderful, but I can also be only with myself and enjoying the time and enjoying myself while I am doing something that I really like. So it is also like this independence of someone else, but enjoying being with someone. Can you describe it as well for yourself, or is it different?
No, I think it is like that. That is, so when I was journaling, a lot of times I would write little words of wisdom to myself. And so I would ask myself questions. And one of the questions, and I think this relates to what you're saying, is one of the questions, one of the aha moments was, when you're in a relationship, does that person make me a better person? Am I the best version of myself when I'm with that person? Because quite often in a relationship, maybe you're trying to drag the other person to be a better person and vice versa. So ultimately, who's going to make me the best person, and how do I show up? And because you want to be the best version of yourself for yourself, but also for your relationship.
Okay, this is a good idea, asking these kind of questions. So what other questions did you ask yourself to become more aware of who you are in this moment, and what could be the best version of yourself for yourself, but also for someone else?
This was like, again, a little simple exercise that I thought, because there was other people in my life that were dating as well. And so I was listening to their stories. And I just remember this one friend of mine, it seemed like every time she was talking about the person she was dating, she was upset. And so I said, well, okay, so what if you just took a calendar for a month, and at the end of every day, you put a smiley face or an unhappy face on your calendar and gave yourself a visual? Because if you look back after 30 days and there's more sad faces on your calendar than there are happy faces, then you're not in the right relationship, right?
Yeah, definitely. So it is really also about the awareness, what is my own status, what are my own feelings, what do I send out, and so what is in resonance with my own frequency. Yeah. So of course, if you're always sad and perhaps even mad, how can you be in resonance with someone who is joyful and loves the life? Yeah. So of course you have to bring up your frequency as well, so that you are in resonance with the one you really would like to meet. Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this already is very amazing. And how did you come to the point to say, okay, now I want to write a book out of what I already journaled?
When I was going through the process, and I would be telling people, and I just know that everybody would like, oh my goodness, really? You're willing to go on 50 dates? That sounds horrible, or that sounds really cool. And so I knew that people were interested in the process. And so when my journey was done, I just decided to type it out, and I showed it to a few people who liked it, and they found it. It resonated with them. You know, some people cried and some people laughed and some people just really wanted to learn more. So I just decided that, you know, if the words of wisdom that I gave out resonated with me and resonated with other people, we all, I think, want the same thing. We want to be loved, and we want love, and we want to give love to somebody else. And so my thought was, you know, wouldn't it be amazing if other people could learn from my story? And that doesn't mean that everybody who's single, because maybe there's people that are in a relationship or married and they're feeling a little frustrated. And so maybe my book gives them hope to stay in their marriage. It doesn't have to be, because it's certainly not a how to find a guy book. It's how I found myself.
Yeah, I also see that even if you are in a relationship and you are aware of your self-love or not being in self-love and how you can come into this will make an impact in your relationship. Definitely, yes. So I think this book is fantastic for everybody. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. So now you said you figured out the words of wisdom. How are these words now transferred into what you're doing now? So the book is ready, and what are you doing now with these words of wisdom?
So the book is ready, but I also, I kept the idea of words of wisdom because it just resonated with me. And so I believe, again, that everybody has a story. And so I often want to hear other people's words of wisdom. And so for the last year during the pandemic, with another person, we've co-hosted a free Zoom meeting called Words of Wisdom. And we start off with an hour of some grounding. We ground, and then we do a gratitude writing exercise. And then we have a guest speaker who will share their words of wisdom, because we all have them. And so it's just giving people a platform to share their stories and to share their advice with others.
Where can people find this platform?
You can find the platform on my website, so at cindydrummond.ca. You can register to attend any Sunday morning for free, and then also with WOW, the virtual experience. So that's the one day which you're going to be part of, which I'm very, very excited. And so that is like a full day of 30 speakers, giving lots of words of wisdom and advice on, and not just everyone talking. There's going to be some yoga classes and some cooking classes and some dance, and just going to be a really great way to come together, because, well, we can't all gather in person right now. I think it's very important that we still connect and try to, being alone is one thing, being lonely is another thing. And so if you can create opportunities for connection, I think that's very important right now.
Yeah, so I will put both links to your website and also to the WOW event down in the description so that people can find it. And it makes it more easy to directly reach out to you. How did this WOW event started? So you have done that in person, really as a weekend, meeting people or letting people coming together under this topic of connection and sharing wisdom. How does this all started?
Well, it was only within a couple of weeks of me moving into my parents' basement. And again, I knew that everybody was watching me, and I never wanted people to look at me like a victim. And so I needed a distraction, and I needed something that was positive. So without much planning, I just, so this is 10 years ago, so I picked up the phone and I phoned a resort in the Rocky Mountains in Canada. And I just said, I'm bringing 65 women out to your resort for a weekend. And truthfully, I'd never planned an event before. I didn't know where I was going to find my speakers or how I was going to find 65 women to attend. But word got out, and this was before, I didn't have a website or anything like that. I think I had a Facebook page, but word got out, and 14 weeks later, there we were, 65 women all together in a resort. And it was 12 speakers on a variety of topics, but it was the after dinner, and I'll never forget this, where two women, and I didn't know them, they came up to me and introduced themselves, and they said, wow, your event changed our lives. And I just remember like the shivers going through me and me thinking, no, this event changed my life, because this event truthfully gave me something to live for and something to focus on in the darkest moment of my life.
So what were or what has been the wisdom that has been shared during all these events? So is it only about loving yourself, or is it, do we have different topics? How is it working?
There's always different topics, because one of the things that I say at all my events is I have created an opportunity for you to be creative and connect, and there might be information on love and laughter, but it might be Reiki, and it might be hormones, and it might be, like I said, a yoga class, and there's always karaoke at the end of the night, because we all want to choose what's going to make us happy, and what makes you happy may not make somebody else happy. So, but I think the biggest message is when you bring women together, magic can happen.
Yeah, I think this is also the wisdom of the different people, like the variety of topics they come with, and about their stories they experienced and what they can bring as their experiences. And sharing this is often very powerful, and I totally can get that. If you are 1 week or 1 weekend together and you really come into this deep connection of sharing the wisdom, very powerful things can happen.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I always found very interesting is, I might have 30-year-olds in the same room as 65-year-old women. And when you, after the end of the day on Saturday, and you see them all and we're dancing together, which I know we're not really doing right now, but it didn't matter if you were 30 or you were 65. We all crave that sense of community. And I think one of the things that you had asked me before this was one of my favorite books. And one of my favorite books is The Red Tent by Anita Diamond. And it talks about sort of the days of the Bible, but what the women were doing and how they would gather in the red tent for at certain time of the month. And I just thought, isn't that beautiful? And unfortunately, we don't have many opportunities where we as women just get to come together and take care of each other. And so that's what I hope my event is providing, is that red tent for the weekend where we just talk to each other and learn from each other and love each other.
And now that we are in this very special situation that we can't meet in person, we will have this virtual event next weekend. So can you give me a little bit of information what will happen then? So my audience is, I think, very curious to understand what they can expect when they will join.
Absolutely. So there's over 30 speakers. And so when you join the event, you have a choice of speakers, just like you would at a real event. So every hour there'll be a choice of 2 or 3 different speakers. And so you might want to attend a session where you're talking to a psychic medium, and she's going to give a bit of background on her life and download some messages from a higher power. Another person, I have a few men that are speaking at this event, which is new for me, but a powerful hypnotist from Canada. He's going to, but again, he's not talking necessarily about, hypnotizing people for the sake of us laughing at them, but more like the journey of going into that sort of trance-like state and how you transform your life. And my friend Brenda, who during the pandemic was laid off and went back to her love of cooking. And so she's going to give us ahead of time all the ingredients so we can cook with her from her kitchen. And another person I know, her name is Miriam, and she does these amazing, that she has started during the pandemic, these amazing transformation makeup videos, and she's fun and she laughs at herself, and it's about image but on the outside, but it's also about who she is on the inside. So I think there's just a lot of creative people that have taken a not great situation and pivoted and transformed themselves to be able to still thrive in a uncertain world.
Yeah, so I'm really happy to being also a guest speaker on your event, and I will talk a bit about my transformation, figuring out that now damn it's my time, and how I did the transition going from Germany to Madeira and creating a new vision of my life, so people can be curious to hear also a little bit of my story next weekend. Yeah, so if people would like to get some tips that you could give them to be more aware of themselves, to love themselves and to step forward, what would you tell them?
I think the first thing is the journaling piece. We are programmed to be always doing and not reflecting. And so the journaling piece, at the end of the day, some people journal in the morning, but I think at the end of the day, and you do, take notes from what you're experiencing that day, how you're feeling that day, how you were showing up that day. Because I think that is helpful when you can look back. Because if you were to say to me, well, how were you feeling last Wednesday? I have no idea. I have no idea how I was feeling last Wednesday. And so that journaling gives you the opportunity for reflections. And I think that's very important. Yeah.
I think also what you already said, having this daily gratitude exercise is very helpful. You already mentioned it. And staying in love with yourself, being aware of what are you doing, what are the feelings you do have, and what are you sending out. So there are some really wise words you already told us. So is there anything else that you would like to share that I didn't ask you yet?
I guess I'd just like to share that I do believe in happy endings. And I think that people should set big goals, and they should work towards their lofty dreams. And it's not always going to be easy. There is going to be challenges along the way. But if you surround yourself with good people that want you to succeed, I think that's very important. And so go for your dreams and dream big, because as we know, life is short. And so we should take advantage of every situation and say yes and lean in and get comfortable with being uncomfortable, as we are right now in a pandemic. And I want everybody to achieve their happy ending.
Yes, thank you so much. So powerful words. I'm so happy that you have been my guest on this show, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening or watching my podcast, Holistic Creators. If you want to know more about how I can help and support you, have a look at my website, spiritualchangemaker.com. You can also join my Facebook group, Spiritual Changemakers Community. Stay tuned for the next episode by subscribing to this channel. And you also can check the previous episodes.